good people of YouTube? Mountbatten here. And finally today, after quite the wait, the new Tier 10 Premium British Battlecruiser, the Incomparable, is in port for us to review today. This ship is acquired via steel and costs a little over 31,000 steel to acquire. If you have the coupon, it does drop it down to 23,000 steel and change. And boy, I gotta say, this is quite the ship. Look how massive this thing is. It truly is incomparable to anything else in the game. Wow. What a bolt. So, today we're going to go through the stats of the Incomparable. I have not touched the ship at all except to put her into the port. And then I will take her into battle for quite some time and then come back here and give you guys my first impressions review of the Incomparable. So let's go ahead and break the ship down now based upon her statistics. So, armor. This is a battle cruiser, so she has a 25mm bow. So that's not really going to help you out too much at tier 10, of course. A 25mm stern. No icebreaker bow or icebreaker stern, but she does have a cheek here that is 102mm for the upper and forward part, 127mm for this cheek section. Upper armor is 102, main armor belt's 152, torpedo protection is 32mm of armor. And her citadel is a little bit above the waterline, not incredibly high above the waterline, but not too hard for other ships to get at. She does have a 51mm, not incredibly steeply angled slope, but on top of that, she does have a 279mm strip. Now, I have played against this ship quite a bit as it was in testing and shot quite a few super testers with it. It's not the hardest ship in the world to citadel. Definitely if you catch it broadside and you're in a battleship, of course, you will citadel it. But properly angled, it does seem to be able to bounce things, at least from shooting at it, not playing it per se. Oh, and her deck armor. Bow deck's 25, midsection is all 51mm, and stern is 25 as well. Her turret face is 381, sides are 254, turret top 127, and turret back is 254 as well. Alright. Survivability, she has 70,000 hit points, which is quite low for a tier 10 battleship or battle cruiser. Either way, that is definitely on the low side. About 20,000 from even the lower tier 10 battleships right there. 14% torpedo damage reduction. Her main gun, so she gets 6 of these 508mm main battery guns. They have a reload time of 29 seconds base, 180 time of 30 seconds. That's not bad. Maximum dispersion of 196 meters. That really isn't bad. A maximum range of 17.6 kilometers. There's the catch right there. And they do have a sigma of 2.0. HE, she has a 55% chance of causing a fire per shell. And while that may sound pretty darn good, do keep in mind that Thunderer has a 64% chance, and she has 2 more guns than this ship. So, 6 guns, 55% is not bad, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's the next Thunderer. 85mm of HE pin, and she has the HE and the AP come out the tubes, both at 751 meters a second on these 20-inch guns. And her AP shells do 19,500 maximum damage. That's, of course, with a citadel. Alright, she does get torpedoes. She gets 2 sets of 4 per side. Man. British battleship with torpedoes. So what a day. Alright, so she's going to get 2 sets per side. She gets 1 set per side, but 2 sets of 4 altogether. So they have a range of 10 kilometers, which is not bad. Not as good as the German battle cruisers, however. Maximum damage is 16,767. They've traveled at 62 knots. They're detectable from 1.3 kilometers away, and they reload in 96 seconds. Alright. She does, of course, get the airstrike. 3 flights of the ASW airstrike, although there are no submarines in this patch. A rating of 88, which isn't bad by tier 10 standards. It looks like she's got 26 of these 20mm single mount Orlikins, 8 of these dual mounted Orlikins, and then 4 of the single-mounted, no, they're not Bofors, single-mounted 40mm guns, 12 of these dual-mounted 40mm guns, and then 4 of these Vickers, of these very interesting, like, just mad stack of Vickers. I love, these are like exceptionally British. There's quite a few of these on the Prince of Wales when I was building that model. And then her secondaries do count as dual purpose as well. Oh, speaking of secondaries, I almost forgot to mention those. She does have them. You get 11 of them. They reloaded 3.6. They are 102mm guns. They only keep in 17mm of armor, so they're really not usable at tier 10. I mean, sure, for starting a fire, but I definitely don't think you're supposed to build into the secondaries on this ship. Or if you do, it would be a pretty poor investment. And what do those go out to right now? They only go out to 7 kilometers at the moment. Alright, maneuverability. This is the ship's highlight. She has a top speed of 33 knots base. Absolutely massive turning circle of 1,160 meters. But a fairly decent rudder shift time of 16 seconds flat. Concealment 13.1 kilometers base. That's only about 4 kilometers to play with her current detection range. I'm sorry, firing range. Alright, for her equipment, she gets spotter or fighter. She gets hydroacoustic search, short range hydro. So this is, I believe, the British DD hydro. So it's only goes out to 3 kilometers. Oof. That's even cutting it close for torpedoes too at 3 kilometers. I mean, with the maneuverability of the ship, it should be able to keep up with it. But that's some personal use hydro right there. Engine boost, she gets an 8% boost to her maximum speed. They did cut this down by a bit. I think it used to be 10%. Like, this ship was freaking flying before in testing. But it's active for 180 seconds. It reloads in 120 seconds. You get 3 charges base. And you get 2 specialized repair teams, so she does get a super heal. You get 1,400 points of health back per second. It's active for 20 seconds, reloads in 80 seconds, but you only get 2 of them base. So even with Superintendent, you're only going to get that out to 3. But, I mean, it's quite the heal. But again, the ship is fairly low health too. And of course, she gets the normal damage con. It runs for 15 seconds, and it reloads in 80 seconds as well. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and throw a commander and module build on this ship, and I'll meet you guys right back here. Alrighty, so here's the build I'm going to run on it for this video. You could swap a couple things out on it here and there and tweak this a little bit, but we're going to run with this for now. So for the modules, I went with main battery mod 1, especially since we only have 3 turrets. We really want to keep those turrets in the fight for as long as possible and really want to cut down on any downtime on said turrets. Damage con mod 1, fires suck, and this ship doesn't have a lot of health, especially for its tier. So ideally, we don't want any more fires than we can possibly not have on the ship. Anti-system mod 1 to make that dispersion even better. Damage con mod 2, fires suck. Concealment, because stealth is always nice. And then went for gunfire control system mod 2 to get us out to a 20 kilometer base range. Now, you could, if you want to, take main battery mod 3 and spotter plane, and you would have a comparable range and a 25-second reload instead of a 29-second reload. But just the way that high tier matches go nowadays, having to depend upon a spotter for basically effective range isn't necessarily a good thing in my mind. But if you wanted to do it and play a little bit closer, you could, and I might even switch it out to that once I get a better feel for the ship. And I wouldn't discourage anyone from doing that. It's just that for the purposes of this review, we're just going to run with the range mod for now. Might swap it out later on, who knows. For the commander build, we went with a standard battleship survivability build. So I went with preventive maintenance, and then I went with grease the gears. Jack Dunkirk has an improved grease the gear skill. You could potentially swap this out for, I really don't know what you'd want to swap it out for here at this tier. Maybe safety circle if you're not used to playing battleship and just understanding that you are probably everyone's primary target. Or if you want to be Mimi Brisk, maybe, but that's, I don't know, Brisk's kind of waste of 2 skill points on a battleship in my mind. And definitely not IFHE. So, yeah, just seemed like a solid 2-point skill, and one that I take on most of my battleships anyway. Adrenaline Rush because of course if we take damage we want to get the DPM boost. Then I would go down, definitely take Emergency Repair Expert first for your first 4-point skill, because you need that third damage con, that third repair party. Come back, take up Basis of Survivability to cut down on the fire and flooding time. Then I would take Concealment Expert, and then finally Fire Prevention. So now this gives us a ship with a 20.4 kilometer base range. It's still 204 meter maximum dispersion of that range. It's still very good with 2.0 Sigma. And then for the concealment, our detection range is now down to 10.6 kilometers. That's really, 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 really nice. 10.66 kilometers. This is the stealthiest battleship at this tier. That's insane. That's why you could potentially run the reload mod and play a little bit closer. Could do that. We might try that. But again, we'll see how it goes. And maneuverability with the speed flag one is up to 34.7 knots. And with the engine boost, you get an 8% boost to that as well. Is there anything else I needed to show y'all? Nope, that should be it. Alright, so this is the build I'm going to be running on this ship for the review, unless I change it in the middle of battle, which I normally don't do. But if I do, I'll inform you guys when we get to the voiceover section, which you guys get to hear right now. Alright guys, the voiceover Mountbatten here. So the Incomparable. This is a really, really, really fun ship to play. Its speed is really ridiculous. You can get it well above, I believe, 38 knots and change. For a ship of this size to have that level of speed, coupled with the concealment, good lord, you can get far along down flanks way before the enemy team expects anything with that level of firepower to be there, which means you can get a lot of juicy crawl shots on the enemy team. Shoot, I mean, I don't even know where to begin with this thing. So let's start with the survivability, because obviously this is a battlecruiser with already a very low level of health at its tier, and with 25mm bow and stern plating at tier 10. So, yeah, it's not the most survivable ship. It is definitely full-on a battle cruiser. And like I've said before, with this formula of very thinly armored ships with low levels of health pool but high levels of maneuverability that Wargaming seems to be going with their battle cruisers, quote-unquote, it works here too. It definitely feels like a battle cruiser. You got to trade something for all that speed that you get out of the Incomparable. Now, in terms of maneuverability, the ship really isn't that maneuverable. It is an absolutely giant ship. And again, it's goofy that a ship of this size has a concealment range of 10.6 kilometers with the build. And the module that I've been running at 10.6 kilometers. So the ship is really stealthy, which is really great for a battle cruiser, having the ability to essentially pick and choose the fights you want to or do not want to get engaged in. The only thing is that DDs are still a thing and they can still outspot you, but what's really funny is that you can outspot a lot of battleships with the Incomparable, of course, having the best concealment at its tier for its class. And that is pretty funny when you get to do that. And again, it's a great asset for when you need to leave a fight that you don't need to be in. Now, super ships are, of course, in random battles. Now, I didn't run across too many of them, at least so far. Of course, I'm sure as time goes on, there will be more and more in-game. But, of course, those battleships have 20-inch guns. Well, really, of course, 25mm of bow and stern plating. Of course, anything with 15-inch guns is going to get through you, which is all the Tier 10 battleships, even the Bargon. So, yeah, not the best one-on-one battleship fighter, especially if you're trading blow for blow. But if you can flank them, get on their side, the 20-inch guns on this thing are absolutely devastating. But of course, it cannot tank like a battleship. You can't go bow and you can't go stern. And the only really way you can tank is if you can kind of bait the enemy to shoot at your side plating, and if you angle steeply enough. Now, if you give them any angle that isn't steep enough, which is almost essentially at, like, shoot, I would say if your front turrets or rear turrets are about to get off target, that's about where you want to stay at. Because if it's anything a little bit more than that, you're probably going to get citadeled. And if you're shoot broadside onto an enemy battleship, it's not, am I going to get citadeled? It's how many citadels are they going to get on me? Because, again, this is not a hard ship to citadel. But being as fast as it is, that speed is a huge advantage. Because, I mean, good God, a ship of this big moving almost 40 frickin' knots, of course, at range, that's going to be a big asset to you. You won't even really have to maneuver that much at range. But maneuvering, shoot, is pretty costly in this ship. It will drop you down into the 20s, even with the speed boost equipped, into the mid 20s if you're turning hard enough, because again, big long ship. So that is suckish there, but I mean, again, a ship this fast, this long, that's just how physics work, and it seems to be one of the few things in game that Wargaming seems to follow the physics on. But anyway, the guns, the main feature of this ship, it's 6 20-inch guns. These guns are really sweet. They don't seem to be quite as accurate as the Shikishima, but they're definitely accurate enough to get the job in. The matches that I played, none of them I got under 150k in, so far at least. These guns are nice and punchy, they're pretty accurate. The DPM's pretty nice, especially if you're running Adrenaline Rush. Again, with a Battlecruiser that takes plenty of damage and has a super heal to where you can really, really ride that Adrenaline Rush a little bit more than you could in a normal battleship. You'll be putting a lot of hate downrange with these 20-inch guns. Now, of course, you only have 6 of them, and you naturally want to get all 6 on target, which is a big risk to do, especially in the Incomparable with its massive citadel that's not that hard to hit. But if you're paying attention, especially at range, and again, the ship's not fantastically maneuverable, but it's certainly quick enough to where you can have all 6 guns on target, and if the target's, I'd say, 13 kilometers out, you'll still be able to angle sharply enough to where you'll be able to bounce their shells if they hit you around the midsection of your ship. Now, I'm not saying you can go from full broadside to perfectly angled that fast. I mean, like, you can go from barely having the third turret on target to not having the third turret on target, which at that point you will be angled enough to where you'll be able to bounce and mitigate the damage. And you'll get, of course, used to that as you play this ship more and more. But the guns are really sweet, they're really good, really accurate, and the range mod so far seems to be working out for me pretty well. A reload mod, of course, you'd have a 25-second reload, but then you'd have a 17.5 kilometer range, and there were plenty of times I was having to engage targets past 17.5 kilometers because, of course, it's tier 10, and the 20 kilometer range you get with the range mod is, of course, you know, kind of the minimum effective range that you really need for a tier 10 battleship, especially one that's not focused on brawling like the Incomparable. Torpedoes, I used those a few times. They're not as useful as the German Battlecruiser, so I didn't really have too much success with them. But if you do, of course, find yourself in a brawling situation, be it you stumbled upon someone, because again, you're a battleship with 10 kilometer detection range, and now let's say there's a enemy battleship right in front of you, well, just keep your foot down. Try not to let them have too easy of a shot at your nose. You know, wiggle around a bit, or you can just beeline straight for them and try to shove torpedoes in their side. It'll work like that. I'm not saying that's how you play this ship. I'm saying if you get into an oh crap situation like that, they're very useful for that. And of course, too, with a 10 kilometer range, anything that's in your detection range is in your torpedo range, essentially. So they certainly do have their uses there, especially if like a cruiser or something gets a little cheeky and tries to torpedo rush you. You can, of course, pull a no-you card on them there. That's always satisfying to do. And, of course, if you're passing by any outlets that you think a DD or a cruiser might be trying to sneak through, you can throw them down that little torpedo alley there and hopefully get something. But again, they're not quite like the Germans that have a 13.5 kilometer range where you can just kind of fire them, forget about them. Then about a minute later, you get a random hit. AA seemed okay. I had quite a few games where CVs are going after me because, I mean, this thing is just complete CV bait. It's a massive target that's not that well armored. Rocket planes are going to go after you. Dive bombers are going to go after you, especially HE dive bombers. And, of course, torpedoes, too. It seems okay, but, again, AM modules and such can be broken now. And I was running the fighter, too, because I figured with a ship this large with a thinly armored armor scheme, CVs are going to want my bacon, and they sure do. It seems enough to where you'll annoy a CV if they are not very good at dodging the flak. You'll definitely punish them. But I mean, if you have another AA buddy with you, I think you'll be able to hold your own against CVs as much as you can nowadays, too. Maneuverability, we talked about that, of course. Fantastically fast ship. Great for getting into flanking positions very, very quickly in random battles. Again, if you do use the rudder, you are going to slow down quite a bit because big long boat trying to turn, you're going to bleed a lot of speed. And of course, concealment, I already talked about that too. Great concealment on the ship, great for choosing when and when not to fight. So overall, the Incomparable, 31,000 steel for this ship, or 23,000 if you have the coupon. Is it worth the steel? It is a fun steel boat. Although there are several steel ships I would get in front of this, I would say this is one you should eventually pick up. Definitely get the Stalingrad before this ship. It's always going to be a wonderful ship, both in randoms and in competitive. After that, if you want to compare this to the Shikishima is more of a tanky 20-inch battleship with, I believe, a little bit better accuracy, it seems. That can also do some secondary memes. Incomparable is, of course, a Battlecruiser, very fast for getting onto a flank and punishing broadsides. So at that point, between the Shikishima and the Incomparable, it's really up to you at that point, because again, it is a lot of steel. I mean, I'm assuming that most of you don't want to get the FDR. Burgon's would also be a really solid choice. Would I say pick it up before this ship? I actually don't know, because I don't have Burgon yet. But I do like this ship. I would say it's a steel ship that's worth getting, but I would definitely get the Stalingrad first. Then after that, it's kind of personal preference with what you want. But it's a good steel ship. I would say it should be on your radar to pick up whenever you are satisfied with the steel ships that you already have, but I wouldn't say it's a high priority to get for steel. So that's my first impressions review of the new Tier 10 reward ship, British reward ship, the Incomparable. Let me know what you guys think about this Battlecruiser in the comments down below. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 35,000 subs, and I can't thank you guys enough for that. Hope you're all having a wonderful Thursday. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.